Alright, hey everyone. Before I start this video, quick disclaimer. I'm sure you know that I'm not one to flaunt my production quality, but this episode is a really bad example. Basically, this is a collaboration episode, so I'm working with someone else, and basically I had to use a screen sharing application, QuickTime Player, to record a voice call while we were talking. Because I had my headphones, there were these weird little noises going on throughout, so you might notice them. Don't flame me for them, although they are totally my fault and I'm stupid. Just know that that's why they're there. If you want, just like pretend that you're in the voice call with us and we're all hanging out and talking. That's a good vibe. Go with that. With that being said, hey everyone, Sapaa here, and welcome to the Sapaa Show. Today is a very special episode of the Sapaa Show because it's the second one out of 6. We're making progress. We're like a third of the way through here. It's also important because I'm going to be talking about something very important to anybody interested in making a language. Alright, in fact, it's so important that I'm going to need some help showing you how important it is.
Hi.
Yeah. Hi. I got Chromatic IT with me. He has a PhD in conlang science.
Ology.
Conlang, yeah. Hey, Chroma.
Oh, okay, I'm back.
Yeah, so I'm thinking we tell them what they're in for. What's a phonology? You feel me? A phonology is the system of sounds that's going into the language that you're making. Does that sound about good?
The sound is what happens when air comes out of your mouth or in your mouth, but we'll get to that later.
We'll get to that. So you have your mouth, right? Your mouth makes a lot of sounds, and the world's languages use pretty much all of these sounds. So you have a lot of different options. You feel me? Now, when you have all these sounds, because there's a lot of sounds that your mouth can make, trust me, it's good to have a way to intelligently refer to the sounds you're talking about in writing. There's a system called the International Phonetic Alphabet that's used by linguists and conlangers all across the globe. And it's a system of talking about these sounds. So here's a bit of history about that.
Okay, so the IPA was made in 1886 by some French and English teachers who wanted a system of sounds so French students could understand English sounds and vice versa. Okay, so a lot of other people liked the idea and eventually became the IPA, or the International Phonetics Association, and created the IPA, the International Phonetic Alphabet.
They sure did.
And they had a bunch of symbols for each sound, and you could tell exactly what sound people were making.
That was a great history lesson, but tell me, as an amateur conlanger, I'm curious, how does the International Phonetic Alphabet, how does it work? I've just seen all these symbols, they don't really make sense to me.
A symbol represents a specific sound, the fancy linguistic term
Phoneme.
phoneme.
Yeah.
And there is one symbol for phoneme, not like the weird OU situation in English, like it's thought. No ambiguity in here, boy.
Now, we have to split this explanation up into 2 parts. There's consonants, which are the most intimidating looking, but the easiest to explain, and then there's vowels. So let's start it off with consonants, and then we'll get to vowels later on. So how is this chart sorted? It says, like, place of articulation and manner of articulation. What does that mean?
In a standard IPA chart, the top row is for the place of articulation.
The place of articulation of any sound is where in your mouth, the place in your mouth, where the sound is happening.
Let's run through them real quick. Bilabials with two of your lips, labiodentals with your lip and your teeth, lingual labials, your tongue and the top lip, dental is your teeth, alveolar is at your alveolar ridge, post-alveolar is just right a little past that, retroflex is with your tongue curled back, palatal is just
It's your palate. Yeah, it's your palate.
yeah, your palate. Alveolopalatal is both alveolar and palatal. Velar is with your velus. Uvular is with your uvula. Pharyngeal is even backer, and it's pronounced with your pharynx. The glottal is pronounced with, you guessed it, your glottis.
Yeah,
Wow,
nice
really?
job. And we left out epiglottal because that's basically like pharyngeal but a little more back, and they're often grouped together. Then there's stuff like alveolopalatal, which you can pretty much infer from the name. Post-alveolar is past alveolar. Alveolopalatal is alveolar and palatal at the same time, you know. It's meant to be efficient. So, yeah. And that is place of articulation for you, essentially. Hey, Boo. Now, Boo, can you tell us what manner of articulation is? Sure, Sapaa. Sapaa, manner of articulation is the way that the sound comes out of your mouth. Boo's right. The place of articulation is where in the mouth you're making the sound, and the manner of articulation is how in the mouth you're making the sound. Anyway, here's the manners of articulation.
Nasals are pronounced with your nose. Plosives are short bursts of air. Fricatives are a long, continuous stream of air. Affricates are a plosive and then a fricative. Approximates are where you approximate the sound.
Yeah, you near it. Pretty
Trill
close.
is basically just
Repeated tap.
and a tap is like one of those trill things.
When your tongue quickly taps against the place you're articulating.
The lateral sounds are lateral, where air comes out of the side of the mouth.
Yeah, there's a lot of different places. That was a good run through of the basics, Chroma. Thank you very much. Now, you use these places of articulation and these manners of articulation, and each sound corresponds to two of those, right? But I'm sure you're thinking like, okay, that makes enough sense, but why are there two symbols per box? What's up with that? Chroma, can you answer that for us?
It all has to do with voicing. Voicing is where you don't use your vocal cords or not. Like, for example, z is voice, while s isn't.
That's good enough, yeah.
You can try this at home, kids. Just say S and Z alternating. Z, z, z. You
Yeah.
can hear your vocal cords.
Just put your hand up to your throat and say like tha, tha. All right, everyone, take a breather. We're done with consonants. Now to move on to vowels. The vowel chart, as you can see right here, it's like a little weird trapezoid kind of thing. It's like that for a reason though, because the vowel chart is actually a diagram of your mouth. This makes it kind of intuitive if you know what you're looking at. Vowels are sorted by front, back, close, and open. You can think of it as like an X and Y axis, so the coordinate plane. Alright, let's talk about the x-axis first, which is backness. Backness is how far back your tongue is in your mouth while you're saying the vowel. It's the difference between E and OO. Now let's talk about the y-axis, which is openness. Basically, the openness of a vowel is very roughly how open your jaw is, how much space you're giving your tongue. Roughly along those lines. It's the difference between E and ah, or oo and aw. One last piece of the vowel puzzle here, roundedness. It's a major defining feature of a vowel sound, whether your lips are rounded or not. It's actually the other difference between E and oo. You'll notice with E, your lips are unrounded, but with oo, they're rounded and close together like an O shape. You can actually do some interesting things with rounding. Like, if I took E and said E, but I rounded my lips, I would get E, which is a vowel that you can find in a lot of languages like German or Dutch. Alright, before we finish up vowels, here's one last little thing. The vowels of General American English, which is the dialect that I speak, are I, U, U, O, A, A, I, I, ow, o. Guess what? If you can understand that, you can essentially understand the entire International Phonetic Alphabet. Actually, I guarantee you can, because we basically just covered it. There's a few other little things that we didn't mention. There's a shit ton of diacritics, and those mean various different things, like aspiration, which is when you put an extra gust of air when you're saying a plosive or a fricative or something. There's also different types of articulation. There's actually non-pulmonic consonants. All the consonants we were talking about are pulmonic, which means air's coming out, but then there's some sounds where air comes in, or there's sounds like where you're clicking. They're called clicks for a reason. But that's all extra stuff, and in the grand scheme of things, pulmonic consonants are much more common, but I highly recommend researching this kind of thing if you want to give your conlang an interesting flair. Oh, one last little thing. You may or may not have noticed me using these slashes before and after every sound I'm talking about. If that's the case, you may or may not have been wondering, dang, what's that about? What do these slashes mean? The International Phonetic Alphabet has two methods of transcribing a sound. One of them is called phonemic, as in phoneme. The other one is called phonetic, and that's an important distinction. Phonemic is when you're transcribing a sound using only the sounds from the language you're talking about. Like if I was writing the word pit in English, in phonemic transcription I would write it like this, and in phonetic transcription I would write it like this. In the phonemic transcription I didn't use any sounds that aren't in English, and this is a pretty general statement of what English looks like. It's not fine-tuned to any specific speaker. In the phonetic version with these square brackets, I'm using aspiration, the little H I was showing you earlier. Now that's not necessarily a sound English specifically has. I'm using all these weird symbols to fine-tune how I'm writing it so it can be exactly, or pretty close to exactly, how I pronounce it. So in summary, phonemic transcription is what you use when you're just displaying a general pronunciation of a word in a language. And I can use slashes when I was talking about all the stuff back there because that's not unique to any specific language when I'm just talking about sounds by themselves. And phonetic transcription is used when you're trying to explain what a specific dialect pronounces something as, or what a specific person or a group of people pronounce something as. So you can fine-tune with any symbols you want. In further summary, consonants are sorted in the IPA by place of articulation and manner of articulation. Vowels in the IPA are sorted by openness and backness. Using these variables, as well as voicedness and roundedness, respectively, you can talk about whatever sound you want. And with that, holy crap, hopefully this is the longest episode, because this was a doozy, but thank you all for sticking with me. I love you, and good night.
Flotgill. I'm a bit excited. I'm a bit excited because Flotgill has so many vowels. There's so many vowels. Those languages. Flotgill. I'm a bit excited. I'm a bit excited because this